it in park, pull this, push the button.
It's got to be in park?
Yes, otherwise if you blow that going 80 miles an hour, you'll destroy it.
Hi everyone, I'm Nick Savides. I want to get better at connecting with people, so I'm making a couple of videos as an experiment. I shot this one while attending the Nashville Film Festival with Steven Hoover. As I drove into the city with Steven, I wondered what kind of an experience Nashville would offer. Would it bring new possibilities, new connections, or would it be a time of dissonance and discouragement like other festivals have been? Steven's script Damage Control was one of the top 4 finalists in the festival's screenwriting contest for the half-hour pilots. So he was planning on going and asked me to come along. Steven wrote Up to Date, a short comedy I directed.
Excuse me, bartender? It's this guy here, he's bothering us.
I wouldn't say he's bothering me, that's just his way of being friendly.
Oh, he's bothering me.
I also host NickSav.show, a film and music podcast, and one of my prior guests was Tom Brahmayana, a producer who helped bring about another one of Steven's scripts, Tinker. Here's an audio clip from my interview with Tom, along with footage from the film. If you're curious, you can hear the podcast, learn more about the film, links in the show notes below.
What we want the audience to get out of this is that it doesn't matter what your belief is, it doesn't matter how you were raised, who you are. If you help people, anybody can do the smallest things and make a big difference in someone's life.
You don't need to worry about what I do with that boy.
He's obsessing over that blasted machine.
Why don't you work?
I bet I could fix it.
At one point in the interview, Tom even mentions the Nashville Film Festival. So there's that sense of connection. And Nashville has significance to me for other reasons. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But it was an intriguing possibility. Steven had a contact at the film festival, and he reached out to them about possibly letting me come along and doing podcast coverage. I haven't attended the Nashville Film Fest before, but I have attended other festivals, done coverage for them. So they were able to make a press pass happen for me. And then the idea really had potential. After considering it, thinking it over, praying about it, it felt like it was something I was supposed to do for whatever reason. But then I felt the same way about South by Southwest. In 2019, the only other festival where I did podcast coverage was South by Southwest in Austin. To put my experiences at Nashville in context, I need to tell you a little bit more about South by. This is some footage I shot while attending. I went to South by Southwest with Sam Claitor. He's a producer at Fable House and has become a friend of mine over the years. Going together allowed us a chance to catch up. We started off by joking around a little bit.
I got like this turkey club from it, and then I got fully loaded tater tots, chili and cheese on them. Delicious.
I mean, why should we even go to South by when we can go
get everything we need from Buc-ee's?
Yeah. Do you think it's a stretch to say that someone could fall in love at Buc-ee's?
No, I don't think that's a stretch at all. I think
share a meal, share a life together.
Yeah, or like fall in love with Buc-ee's.
Yeah.
But you fall in love with Bucky, the character is that chipmunk.
Right. So then that can complicate it. Because like, what if you go there and you're already with your significant other?
You realize it's just fictional.
Right.
Bucky doesn't actually exist.
Yeah. And then Sam was actually the guy who introduced me to Buc-ee's. And so it was fun to kid around about that a little bit. But eventually we did get to more serious conversation. I don't know about you, for me, sometimes I need a little bit of humor to warm up, to really get to the meat of things. Sam is actually a really great connector. It's a skill that serves him well as a producer. So I was curious about his approach to connecting with people at a film festival.
I'm not there to try to get my project picked up immediately. Like, it's always a multiple step process to get a film made, get a project picked up. I'm going there to build relationships, and one of the easiest ways to build a relationship is to provide some kind of value to them. So I'm always thinking about, hey, I'm meeting this person, how can I help them out? And sometimes you can do that in a really simple way. Sometimes that's just connecting them with someone else.
Building relationships, whether personal or professional, is not something I do well, but it's something I'm working to get better at. So I'm grateful to hear from others like Sam who are doing it well repeatedly. Actually, I had a couple of almost connections at South by in the various years I've attended, and I told Sam about some of them.
You've kind of had an interesting streak in the past. I know. South by Southwest.
He gave me a little bit of a hard time about one instance in particular.
You seem like we have good rapport for...
It was a girl that was stuck in line with us for a while, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at the beginning.
Yeah,
but we
right.
saw...
Basically, she had no other options, and she was forced to talk to us.
In that particular instance, the girl was friendly enough. Sam was there. Sam witnessed it, and she even gave me her phone number. So that counts for something, right? But then, when I followed up a few days later, there was a loss of interest, a disconnect somehow. It happens. People get preoccupied with other things. They meet new people, new possibilities on the horizon. I get it. I've done that too. But that kind of thing has happened enough that I sometimes wonder if there are other factors at work. It's possible, for example, that she listened to my podcast. It's not something that I bring up all the time or discuss often on every episode, but if someone listens to a couple of episodes, they might get the sense that my outlook is right of center. And sometimes I get a sense that's an obstacle for some people, which is too bad. I'm friends with people of all kinds of backgrounds and perspectives. I try not to let someone's political outlook or sensibilities be an obstacle to working together or even being friends, as long as we can treat each other with respect and consideration. That's the key thing most of the time. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like everyone can say as much. Politics can be a contentious issue. It can have repercussions, talking about it in some cases. Sometimes for me, when I decide that it's appropriate for me to talk about something, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, oh man, this might cost me a job opportunity. Is it worth it? Sometimes it feels like it is. But it is a contentious thing, and it can be an obstacle to connection, at least for some, especially in the entertainment industry. I understand. I've thought about this. I want to be more likable. I want to connect. But at the same time, I don't want to get that by compromising on things that I believe in, the things that are important to me. Is it possible to see things differently and still connect with others, still build long-term relationships or a long-term career in the entertainment industry? I'm not sure, but I hope so. I'm glad I went to South by Southwest. There were important takeaways and some positive aspects for sure. But attending was not without dissonance. And there's been dissonance attending past South by Southwest festivals as well. So it made me even more apprehensive about what Nashville would hold. I'm not going to get into everything that happened at South by Southwest here. If you're curious, again, check the links. I'll include my coverage from past festivals. You can go and check it out. Nashville is known to be a little more conservative, at least in comparison to a place like Austin, which has its hippie influences and its Keep Austin Weird slogan. So I figured that might work out well for me. Then again, I was going to a film festival, and film festivals in general are not known as bastions of support for the Reagan Ranch or Milton Friedman, for example. I got to Nashville before the film festival started and before Steven arrived, so I had some time to do some exploring on my own. The Nashville Parthenon that you see here has a special place in my heart, not just because I'm Greek, but it's also a place I went to with my sister when we first came to visit Nashville. That was at the tail end of our road trip back in 2009, 10 years ago. Visiting Nashville then won me over to the city and to country music, and that road trip was one reason why I was so open to coming back. I attended one time prior to the film festival as well. This was my third visit, and the city is captivating to me. The Parthenon is part of it. When I was here with my sister the first time, we didn't have a lot of time. The place was closing in a few minutes, so we rushed through it. This time, I had a little bit more time to linger, to explore inside and out. If you go to the Parthenon in Athens and then come to the one in Nashville, you can't help but notice that the one in Nashville is in far better condition. It's erect, it has the statues based on the historical record or cast from the Elgin marbles. The one you see in Greece, just relics, remnants of what was. I know the one in Athens has been around for thousands of years. Yes, and the one in Nashville, just 100 years plus. All right. But still, it's striking. It's notable to someone like me who's Greek. What's more, inside of the Nashville Parthenon, there's the large statue of Athena, a statue that no longer exists in Greece. The one in Nashville is based on what historians believe the statue looked like. So it's something to behold. And at the same time, a little sad that it's not there in Greece. This photo is from the road trip. You see me hemming it up a little bit, bemoaning the reality that the Nashville Parthenon is in better condition than the one in Greece, the original. So it goes. As I mentioned before, I'm Greek. Mom and Dad were born in Greece. So I couldn't help but take another photo. Here's what it looked like with this visit to Nashville. In case you're wondering, the Parthenon in Nashville was initially built in 1897 for the Centennial Exposition. It was to underscore the fact that Nashville was sometimes known as the Athens of the South. While visiting the Nashville Parthenon, I made another discovery. As the plaque reveals, it was listed in the National Registry of Historic Places on February 23rd, 1972. The number 23 actually has made a recurring appearance on my podcast, so I take note of it. Maybe it's just confirmation bias at this point. I don't know. I couldn't help but notice that the number has showed up a number of times in my Nashville visits, more so than even in my ordinary world. Some of these are from my visit back in 2017, so maybe they've changed. Still, a notable amount of appearances. And the number would show up in a notable way again later in my visit. When Stephen arrived, I got to do more sightseeing with him. We hit up some of the classic spots: Ernest Tubbs Record Store, Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum, and more. I even got to try on a cowboy hat. What do you think, huh? One of the last spots we visited that day was the Underground, a name that's a little ironic considering that it's several floors above ground, and like many of the spots on Broadway Street where it's located, it has a sky bar with a notable view above ground. Possibly the name was selected to indicate that the place is so underground, i.e. known only to the cool kids, that it can get away with being so above ground. But I did not inquire about this. Mariah was actually working as bartender on the top floor of the Underground, where they have the sky bar, and I was captivated by how friendly she was, so I asked for her approach to connecting with people.
I don't think anyone ever goes into a bar not wanting to have a conversation, whether they act like it or not. You just have to be able to engage that person in a way that makes them feel comfortable enough to talk to you.
Straightforward, but still good advice. Sometimes I get caught up in thinking, this person doesn't want to talk to me. I would be bothering. I would be disturbing or interrupting them. So to assume positive intent is a good exercise. Think this person really does want to connect. It's just a matter of figuring out how, finding the right language to do that. All right. Thanks, Mariah. You know, she was nice enough to even laugh at my jokes.
Just kidding.
And she complimented one of the shirts that I had purchased. This one I'm wearing now. So maybe Nashville Film Festival would be a better experience than South by Southwest. Some promising signs so far. But then at South by, I did managed to get a paid gig while there shooting camera for some of the events. So, too soon to say just yet. Shortly after that, the Nashville Film Festival kicked off. All kinds of films to see, events to attend, people to meet. And they had their filmmaker lounge right by the theater where the events were happening. So it was a good chance to connect and hang out with others in a more casual way. Not too long after that, another friend, DJ Shea, joined us. He's the visual effects supervisor at Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta. And so it was fun getting to bring him along with us, go explore films together, meet people together, get his take on some of the films we saw. As the festival progressed, I did get to do a number of interviews for the podcast. And for the first time with my podcast coverage, I wanted to also get some video getting to know some of the guests who had the time and were up for hanging out. This is Amanda Young. She's one of the directors I featured on the short film episode. And she had some time after the interview and was up for getting ice cream together right nearby. This is Alicia from Hattie Jane's. She was nice enough to say hello to us on camera, tell us more about ice cream, and let me capture her at work.
We're Hattie Jane's. We make all of our ice cream from scratch. It's all made from local ingredients. We use Hatcher Dairy, which is local around here. It's all made in-house. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Actually, normally don't work the events. I make ice cream in Columbia.
Ah, wow.
But I've been with them not too long, since about June.
So you're like their superstar, and they're like, we're doing a posh event at the film festival.
Yeah.
Listen to Alicia to rock the event, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Or nobody else wanted to work on a Sunday.
Oh, well, come on.
One of those.
No, obviously it's because you're incredible, and they want you to charm the movie festival goers.
Yes. I've never been to anything like this. It's very neat. I wish I could go inside, but it's stuck out here.
Similar to the situation with Buc-ee's back at South by Southwest, I did think very seriously about ignoring the festival and just staying there, getting more ice cream. This whole camera setup is just a way to trick you into giving me more sprinkles on. Hang out with Alicia. That would have been weird though, and I had a job to do.
Nashville Film Festival.
And boom.
There we go.
There we go. These are the sacrifices I make for you and you over there in the back. Yeah. I do it for you. I give back. Sometimes sacrifices must be made. You're welcome. Kidding aside, it was fun hanging out with Amanda, learning about her short film and sharing ice cream, talking to Alicia. I got to meet others in similar situations, and they were fun little vignettes. And I got some takeaways, several hours of podcast interview at this point. You can find them by visiting nicksav.show. But in the back of my mind, I was wondering, I was meant to come out here for this? I've done this kind of thing before. Why did it feel like I should come specifically to Nashville? Then I did the interview with some of the guys from Lost Bayou. These are filmmakers from Louisiana. I've gotten to know them from other film festivals and events. I'd consider them friends at this point. After we did the interview, we went to the lounge and took this photo. On the left is actor, writer, producer Hunter Burke, then director, producer Brian Richard. That's me. Hey. And then actor Jackson Beals. Shortly after that, I was hanging out with Katie Amond, another filmmaker I met in Louisiana. She's since moved to Nashville, where she's shooting more films out there. But she was with her actress friends. And then Hunter Burke came up and said hello. Since they were from Louisiana, I thought it might be fun to include them in the video. And I asked if they could just do the walk in again, walk into camera, so we have the establishing shot. I didn't think that was an unreasonable request, but here's what resulted.
Katie Amon? Oh my God, can I have your autograph?
Hunter Burke?
No,
wait,
no, that's not it at all.
No. Claus?
Santa Claus, yes.
Santa Claus 3.
Yes. Subtle. Cinema verite right there, ladies and gentlemen. But that's what I get for not being more specific. And it was amusing enough. Can't really blame him for that. All good. After a little more banter from Hunter, he told us that after the screening of their film that night, a few of them from the film were going to the Crying Wolf. And he invited us to come check it out, come hang out for a bit. As it happens, the Crying Wolf is located on 823 Woodland Street. I couldn't help but notice. It's not just that the number 23 is there, but on 8/23, August 23rd, was when I had announced that the podcast was going on hiatus. When I made the decision about that several weeks prior, I wasn't aware of the Nashville Film Festival. That came later. Stephen mentioned it to me mid-August. I hadn't told Stephen that I was thinking about stepping away from the podcast for a while, so he reached out to the festival about the possibility of letting me cover it, getting me a press pass. when it came together, it made me think about extending the podcast, at least for a little bit. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but maybe it was the universe trying to nudge me forward to keep going for a little bit longer to see what happens. It's complicated. There were some things that came up with the podcast where I thought, okay, I need to take a break, rethink things. It's mostly been a positive experience during the podcast, but there were some dissonant notes. Won't get into all that. Again, you can go back and listen to that episode on the podcast if you're curious, but I took note. 823 is significant to me. And we were going to a venue there. I'm still not sure what happens with the podcast. I have one episode left to release, and then we'll see what happens. All that to say, the number 823 has significance for me. Actually, I ended up releasing the Lost Bayou episode after the 823 announcement. Wasn't thinking about that number at the time. It was just something that happened. It made sense to get it out because they were doing a screening at the New Orleans Film Festival not too long after the festival at Nashville. And a number of my listeners are near New Orleans, so it made sense. I promise I did not ask the Lost Bayou filmmakers to do some kind of tie-in to 823. It's conceivable that they may have listened to the podcast episode, even though it did not pertain directly to them. And they may have thought, you know what, let's pick a number to mess with Nick. You saw what they did to my beautiful establishing shot earlier, but probably unlikely. They probably picked the Crying Wolf because it's known to be a posh spot around town. It's a notable coincidence, sure. But then those kinds of notable coincidences come up. They seem to come up quite a bit in my life. Maybe they do for you as well, but I have a couple of instances in my life that seem to be stranger than fiction. But then the religions of the world tend to be based on the belief that sometimes things happen that are stranger than fiction, that are difficult to explain, beyond the realm of science. So who knows? Anyway, what happened at Crying Wolf? It's pivotal to my experience at the festival. So I'm going to try to tell you about it in a subjective way. This wasn't something I could articulate at the time, but in retrospect, it felt kind of like there were two competing melodies relating to my experience at the festival, tying into past festival experiences, other things going on in my life. And those melodies culminated at the Crying Wolf. This is something that's tricky to convey. I'm going to try to do that with music to show you what I was thinking and feeling, and trying to compress something that was going on for days and weeks into a few moments. I'll tell you, this is all footage I shot at the festival or earlier, South by Southwest, prior episode. The music is music I found after the fact and paid for, but it kind of fits. So bear with me if you can. All right, now you might be hearing this, seeing this, and thinking, Nick, conflicting melodies about your experience. What are you talking about? All right, we are talking about Nashville, Music City, And it's how I think sometimes, all right? I don't think it's all that unusual. At least to me, it makes perfect sense. But to be fair, I was listening to Beethoven's Eroica Symphony recently, and there are seemingly conflicted elements in those melodic riffs and the themes that develop. Oh, and there was someone else at the festival that has that sensibility as well. Johnny Cash. He seemed to keep showing up in all kinds of ways, all kinds of places while I was attending the festival. Stephen and I went to the Johnny Cash Museum, but he had a section at the Country Music Museum, some other places as well. Actually, one of the Airbnbs I stayed at while at Nashville was a place in Hendersonville. I didn't know it at the time, but apparently there's a Johnny Cash house out there as well. This was something that came up in conversation with a couple people, as it turned out. One of my Lyft drivers was even telling me about it. I believe it was this gentleman. There was a Johnny Cash film that screened at the festival called The Gift, and it ended up being my number one pick from the festival. Listen to part 3 of my festival recap for more on that. But he had that sensibility, walk the line, and then had a change of heart, a transformation, you could say. And he's an influence, so maybe there's some of that here. I don't know, but it's how I think about things. So indulge me if you can, or, go do something else. Finish that crossword puzzle. Fine, whatever. One more note about the camera. For this episode, I've been using my iPhone 11 Pro. It's compact and has pretty decent quality. And I like that it's relatively fast to set up and relatively unobtrusive, as opposed to other cameras that are bigger, involve more lights, and so on. I have equipment that's a little nicer, but didn't use it for this. Might use it at some other point. I mention this because overall it's not been bad, but the bar scene at the Crying Wolf, low light conditions. And so at times it's a little grainier than I'd prefer. But it was the trade-off between being relatively unobtrusive or using a bigger camera. And I've been using Filmic Pro, the same app that they use to shoot Tangerine, to capture this. Most of the time quite robust. In low light, when you're pushing the exposure settings and the frame rates and the resolution, it can have issues. But this isn't a tech show. If you're curious about some of the settings, some of the things I found in testing this, leave a comment below and I'll elaborate. This is the connection experiment though. So some things are going to work better than others, and it helps doing these kinds of things for the bigger projects. If I was shooting a film or a commercial or what have you, I would have higher quality standards. But for this, trying to capture it as it goes, trying to learn from the experiments, I'm open to something that I wouldn't normally include for a point. So bear with me if you can. All right, with that said, here we are. The first melody is something frenetic, at times wild and suggestive. Not unlike the riffs that they were playing inside the Crying Wolf from their overcranked speakers. It's the kind of song that I feel sometimes at film festivals in general, even at Nashville on occasion. And it's not always easy to resist falling in sync with that siren song. it sounds kind of like Boogie Woogie by Jake Bradford Sharp.
Whatever about to dance, I'm just like that fish.
The look of the man is like, why are we taking this ridiculous shot?
When I fist stop, don't move. And when I say get it, I want all of y'all to go hold it now.
This is Luke Monday, a recording artist in Nashville. He's also the owner of the dog and was nice enough to let us say hello to him.
I understand, Katie, that you've got a special necklace.
I do.
Let's see it.
You never forget where you come from. That's right.
Yeah, thank you,
That's
Katie.
it.
Stop. Boogie woogie.
The second melody is quieter, more contemplative. It gently prods as it reminds of better things. It's not unlike the effect that watching Lost Bayou, the film, had on me, or that sense of genuine camaraderie I felt that night, talking with some of the people there about the films that we saw and the things going on in our lives. It's sort of like the song Run, Run by Giants and Pilgrims. On Luke's Instagram profile, he has Psalms 46:10 as his bio. That's the verse that says, "Be still and know that I am God."
But you can find another shelter you can call your own. You can't push time. You can't push time. But you can ride out every wave like an alibi. Won't leave. Your past won't leave. It'll stay with them like it stays with me. You won't break free. You won't break free. 'Cause death is gonna get you like it's gonna get me.
Those two competing melodies did not get fully resolved at the festival, but the balance shifted when Amanda Lyons showed up. She's a friend from Baton Rouge who is visiting her sister in town, and she had some time to go exploring Nashville with me. And just to avoid any misunderstandings, I should mention that at this point, Amanda is just a friend. After Amanda spent some time with her sister, we met up to go check out Oktoberfest at Germantown part of Nashville, which is not too far from the state capital. Afterwards, we went to see Katie Ammon's film, 5 Women in the End. You remember Katie. She was the girl that said hello to Hunter earlier. We had one more day to go exploring, and we had some time to kill from our next ticketed event. So we went to the Bavarian Beer House because, well, we didn't get enough Oktoberfest at Oktoberfest. No, I'm just kidding. Oktoberfest was great. It just so happened that I read great things about the Bavarian Beer House. Supposedly, their Bavarian onion soup, very well regarded even by the Food Network. So we were curious to go check it out.
Yeah, I think my foodie sensibility is happy.
Then this next conversation happened. It's the kind of thing I thought about not including. My instinct was to delete it. It wasn't something I was planning to include. I actually thought I had stopped recording so that we could have a more honest conversation about some things. Turns out the camera was still rolling. I thought about not including it because it's complicated. It's not the kind of thing I bring up to most people. But I have just 3 rules for this connection experiment series. And one of them is to aim for connection and honesty whenever possible. And if I didn't include this, I would be deleting the most honest conversation that I had during this video and maybe even at Nashville. So I'm going to include it. It does relate. It felt like I was supposed to reach out to a couple of people in my life. And in regards to film and some of the things I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And in 1 or 2 instances, it even felt like there might even be something there. You know, like for a while I was like, okay, this could be the one. I don't know if I believe
am I a woman? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it fell apart in like the worst possible way, you know? And to this point, I feel like I was being strung along and maybe even manipulated.
I'm so sorry.
No, I mean, it happens, but the thing that's frustrating is like, I trusted and prayed. It's like, it felt like the thing I was supposed to do. And so,
yeah,
that's the hard part. It was like, it wasn't like, it was only after like, I thought about it, prayed about it. People I trusted, it's like, I don't know about this. And then someone I trusted, like a close friend, would say something that would make me be like, okay, that was the one thing I needed to hear to like
to move
you know?
forward with this.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, like, it would make me feel better if it was like, it happened when I was like trashed and I was like drinking and I had a brainstorm. And the people that told me were like, you know, the suspect hooligans that I don't, they're like, okay, I hang with you, but I don't consider you a good friend, and you know, you're probably a pirate. But it was like, from the people I trusted the most, who were the most decent, who I still look up to.
Yeah, I'm really sorry.
The thing is, like, even coming here, I had like a range of emotion, you know? So it's sort of like coming here felt like something I was supposed to do. But that's only so reassuring when it's like, well, but it also felt... The conversation ends abruptly because that's when I realized oh man, I'm still recording, I hit stop and then continue the conversation off camera. In retrospect, it felt like one of the reasons I was supposed to go to Nashville was to have that conversation. Something that I needed to acknowledge, but also revisiting it made me realize that one of the reasons I decided to go to Nashville was the hope that somehow I could change that narrative, that somehow something positive could come from that seemingly dissonant, seemingly unrelated incident or ongoing incidents. Somehow it could change with Nashville. And it did, at least in a small way. I didn't start doing these connection experiments until after I got back from Nashville. I had shot them before. The first one I shot back in January 2019. But it was so challenging, uncomfortable for me to share those things that I put it off indefinitely. At least that's how it felt at times. Because of that sense of connection I felt with Amanda, at least in part because of it, I was able to put the videos together. And I didn't realize this until putting this video together. The outfits I wore for videos 1 and 2 were outfits that I had purchased with Amanda. We also got to do some shopping while we were waiting for our ticketed event. And it was the kind of thing that had that comforting feel in the back of my mind, right? But it had that kind of a feel that I could feel a little bit more comfortable taking on something I was trying to avoid. It had that kind of impact. And so it did change things at least a little bit. The ticketed event I mentioned was for the Grand Ole Opry, the backstage tour. When I first came to Nashville with my sister, I had gone to see a show at the Grand Ole Opry, but I didn't get to do the tour. This time I did.
This is a new experience for me, Nick. Hello, we're gonna go check out the Grand Ole Opry. Let's go.
While taking that backstage tour and throughout my time at Nashville, we came across musicians who spoke openly about their faith, took pride in their country, put flags up in their dressing room, and gave credence to traditions that had brought them there. That's not the sort of thing you tend to see at South by Southwest, at least not when I've gone. So in that case, Nashville was a little different. And I'm glad I went.
I swear it's in the morning when the sun comes out. Your God won't talk. Your God won't talk. But he'll sing within your blood and he just won't stop. Run, run, just run, run to the